morning it is. How's my sound? All right, excellent. So today is the 6th in a series of 10 talks based on the principles set forth by Dr. Wayne Dyer, which he entitled Top 10 Principles for Manifesting with Your Mind. I love the work of Dr. Dyer as he emphasized the importance of taking personal responsibility for our lives and our choices, and encouraged us to tap into our inner potential to live lives embraced by love, forgiveness, and spiritual growth. So this 6th principle is give up your personal history. We all have a history. We all have a past. We all have our stories. We've had challenges, pain, wounds, joy, sadness, happiness. And Dr. Dyer asks that we not live our life stuck in a moment that is gone. I love that sentence. He asks us not to live our life stuck in a moment that is gone. I think we all know what that feels like. All that history makes up a lot of baggage, and we carry it around. Maybe a backpack, maybe a suitcase, maybe a steamer trunk. This is our history and contains all of the people, events, and circumstances that we have bonded to. We carry these around, using them to inform our present, which then informs our future. We identify with them. We hold them close, don't want to let them go. After all, who would I be if I let go of my past? Occasionally, we may set them down, set our back down, and we dig in and we reach out one and we look at it, and we examine it, and we carry it around for a while, and then we put it back in our pack. And consequently, this pack just keeps getting heavier and heavier, and we wonder why we feel weighted down. This weight brings feelings of sadness, anger, lost, depressed, and we carry it. It's uncomfortable, painful even, and yet we continue to pack it around, hidden in the depths of our bag. A good description of this is Jacob Marley in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. This is how Dickens describes the ghost of Jacob Marley. The chain he drew was clasped around his middle. It was long and wound about him like a tail. And it was made of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. When Scrooge questions Marley about the chain, Marley replies, "I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on of my own free will, and of my own free will I wear it." Then Marley asks Scrooge, "Is its pattern strange to you?" When we haul around these chains of the past, they hold us in the past and prevent us from going forward into the here and now unencumbered. Dr. Dyer told the story of a woman who came to see him after her husband of 25 years had left her. She had 4 children and was on the verge of suicide. She was losing weight, miserable, taking drugs for depression. She was getting sicker and sicker because she just kept focusing on what she had lost and how empty it made her feel. When she came to one of Dr. Dyer's book signings, she said to him, "You've got to say something to me that will help me get over this." And his reply was simple: give up your personal history. Merge yourself here, now, into this moment. Let go of that 25 years. And in a lecture that he did, I watched him, he says, you know how he always wore the really wonderful cap? He takes off his cap and he says, think of this cap as your personal history. You could just set it down and walk away from it, but you always have it there. You always have it there and you're going to see it. You're always going to have it there. He says, no, no, no. What you do is you take it out, you examine it, you look at it, you embrace it, and then you let it go. You let it go. You learn from it. You understand it. You accept it. And you let it go. He makes it sound easy, this setting down and walking away. But it's not easy, is it? This is our past. We lived it. We're attached to it. It still has meaning. I love the metaphor by Alan Watts that he used about the wake of a boat being like our past. The wake that follows the boat in the water is not what drives the boat. The wake is just the trail that is left behind. That's all it is. I'm sure that most of us here have probably ridden in a boat on our beautiful Lake Oroville, and we've watched the wake of the boat behind us as the water churns up, and then little by little it just dissipates and disappears until there's no trace of it. The wake of our lives is like that. It does not propel our life like the boat. It is not the reason why our life is going in the direction that it is. You could say it informs my present, but it's not the whole thing. The wake is the trail left behind, and it's an illusion to believe that this wake is the cause of our suffering, struggles, or difficulties. Dr. Dyer asks us to give it up, embrace it, understanding. Get help if you need it, then let it go and move on into the now. It's not an easy process. I'm sure every single one of us knows that. It is not an easy process, but it can be done. One little piece at a time. One of my heroes is Helen Keller. She was born in 1880 in Alabama. When she was 19 months old, she became very ill with what was probably scarlet fever, which left her blind and deaf. Her parents loved her dearly, and in their love and pity, tried to make her life as easy as possible. They let her do whatever she wanted, and by the time she was 6 years old, she was totally out of control. That was when they sent for a teacher rather than put her in an asylum, which would have been the normal course in that time. A child that could not communicate, was blind and deaf, would have been put in an asylum. So that teacher was 20-year-old Annie Sullivan. This was no easy task for Annie because she needed to teach Helen so many things, not the least of which was to communicate. And to do this, she needed to recognize language. And so Annie began signing American Sign Language letters into her hands, representing words. And of course, Helen did not know what her teacher was doing. There are two very beautiful films which depict Annie Sullivan's struggles to teach Helen and Helen's struggles to let go and learn. If you have seen either of the films, you will not have forgotten that beautiful scene at the well, where finally, all of a sudden, it opens up. The future opens up for Helen, and she recognizes that these things that her teacher has been putting in her hand are symbols for things, they're words their communication. It's a beautiful, beautiful, correctly interpreted thing in both of those movies. So Annie accompanied Helen to Radcliffe College, where Helen graduated cum laude in 1904 at the age of 24. Helen developed skills that had never been accomplished by a similarly disabled person, and then she began to write of her experiences with blindness, which at the time was really not done, because much of blindness in those days was caused by venereal disease, which of course a young innocent woman is not supposed to know anything about. It took Helen 25 years to learn to speak so that others could understand her. She mastered several methods of communication, including touch lip reading, braille, speech, typing, and American Sign Language finger spelling. Each one of those would be considered another language. She wrote several books and lectured primarily on behalf of the American Foundation for the Blind. Her efforts to improve treatment of the deaf and the blind were influential in removing the disabled from asylums. Annie Sullivan stayed with Helen as her companion for 50 years until Annie's death in 1936. Helen became one of the 20th century's leading humanitarians and was co-founder of the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union. During her remarkable life, she stood as a powerful example of how determination and hard work can propel one to triumph over adversity. With a great deal of persistence, she overcame difficult conditions and grew into a respected, world-renowned advocate who labored for the betterment of others, especially the blind and the deaf. To do all of this, she had to let go of her past. She had to let go of that scared little blind and deaf child who was living in a totally dark world. She had to give up her past and move forward to learn, to thrive. And in so doing, she impacted so many lives. This is my favorite quote. Today, this is my favorite quote by Helen. She says, "Character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, ambition inspired, and success achieved." And I would add to that, she would know. So I'd like to offer you some suggestions for letting go of your past. Number one, value yourself. Value who you are right now, what you have achieved. Take care of yourself, practice self-care. What does this have to do with letting go of the past? Trust me, it does. We have to value the present in order to let go of the past. When you need a quiet day, take one. When you need a fun day, take one. A day at the beach, a simple meal with friends. Value who you are today. Here's a hard one. Accept that someone who hurt you may never apologize. They may not even be aware of the ramifications of their actions or the hurt they caused. There is nothing we can do to change another. There is nothing we can do to change the past. That recognition and acceptance can literally set us free. Find ways to be grateful. Grateful for who you are today, how far you've come, how much you've accomplished. And please do not judge past actions by present knowledge. You may know now that a particular action was probably not a good idea. We all have those, don't we? Come on, guys, that was funny. But we only recognize this because we're looking at it in the rearview mirror. If you had known then what you know now, you probably would have made a different choice, a different decision, but you didn't. And it's gotten you to right here. Practice gratitude and mindfulness. There's so much help available today. Books, classes, workshops, lectures, TED Talks, you name it. Dig in, dive in, find out more. Knowledge can be powerful. But above and beyond all of those little hints, suggestions, I recommend prayer. When we utilize the discipline of prayer, it puts us in closer communion with God. And when we focus on the divine, so many things can fall into place and start to make more sense. It's like the hymn said, take it to God in prayer. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. What peace we often forfeit, what needless pain we bear, all because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. When we have trials and temptations, when we have troubles, we should not be discouraged. Take it to the Lord in prayer. God will share all our sorrows. Carry everything to God in prayer. And right here, I'm going to put a plug in for our prayer chaplains. We've got Khadija and Carolyn and Shyla and myself. All of us love to share prayers with you. There is no prayer too big or too little to share because we're sharing it with God. That's what we love to do, is we love to share prayer time with you. The book of Philippians is a very short book in the New Testament, the 11th book, written by St. Paul the Apostle in about 60 Common Era. He was writing to the Christian congregation in Philippi in Greece, and he was writing to them from a Roman prison, probably in Rome or maybe in Ephesus. So from this Roman prison, he writes, rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say, rejoice. Do not worry over things, but always by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God that passes all understanding shall keep your hearts and minds in Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Oh, thank you, Rosie. That was great.